Hello, and welcome to ShineThru's Founder Stories. Today, I'm joined by the talented, intelligent, and charismatic Dr. Jean Egmon, the founder and CEO of Third Angle. Jean is such an impressive and inspiring guest. Not only is she a founder and CEO of the highly sought-after consulting firm Third Angle, but she has also been a longtime professor at Northwestern University under the Kellogg School of Business, as well as an innovator with many patents to her name, a consultant for some pretty big and well-known firms that I'm sure many of you know, such as Boeing, Kraft, Procter & Gamble, just to name a few. And now, most recently, she's an author. Jean has dedicated herself and spent over 30 years helping so many of her clients not only achieve success, but to thrive, primarily through detecting and connecting their most valuable, yet often unrealized, assets. In her upcoming book, she shares stories, examples, and templates that I truly believe are going to be so helpful to anyone within an organization that's looking to thrive or succeed or just flourish in their role, or anyone that's leading and growing their own business and seeking success. In our conversation today, we're going to talk through what her book is all about, what it takes to find hidden value and success in any organization. And she's also going to share some funny stories that can be found in her upcoming book that I think just bring a human level to all of our understanding of what it is to succeed in a corporation, in an organization, and in whatever role you're in. So I hope you absolutely love this chat with Jean. I know that I did. Let's get started.
I guess I'll start with, when I was thinking about what to say about myself, I'll start with some themes that will lead into Third Angle, because everything makes more sense when you look backwards, like, oh, that was leading me there all along.
Yeah.
So I think of a handful of things that have been thematic in my life since I've been a kid. Love of chemistry, love of mysteries. I journal. I've journaled like my whole life. So I'm a big observer of things and write it down and then make sense of it. And then in terms of interacting with other people and organizations, I've always been a seer of potential. So like even in high school, we would have our class organizations and things, and I would always say, we're capable of more, where other people were fine with just what was going on. I was always kind of the pusher, like, good, there's more to it. And that would then like lead me to become a leader. People would elect me to lead things and kind of realize that potential and advise things. So advise people, advise organizations. So that's been an ongoing theme in my family, in high school, in college. And I just kept going. But at the early time, didn't realize you could make a career out of combining those things.
Yeah.
But now that seems to be happening.
I love that.
So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And I love practical creativity. So that idea of seeing potential and, hey, look what we could revise the way we do this dance or the way we run this meeting or whatever. That it takes creativity, but it's around very practical things. And it's always respecting the people who are involved in it and what they have to offer. So that's that potential too. And that's like looking at the assets, including the people assets, and how do you bring those to life?
Yep. Yeah, that's great. And I like you said dance too, because I think it's a balance of you have to know when to step in and help lead or when to step back and allow people to really let their full potential.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a learning. I'm much better at that now than I was when I was very young, when it's just like, wow, let's go. But fortunately, you're around strong people, so they push back too. And then you learn to, I'm kind of probably jumping ahead in the interview, but one time, one of my students, I formed a company in 1999. It was called Organizational Leadership Consultants. And then in 2001, my accountant said, I think because of the way you're doing business, you should incorporate. So it was a chance to change the name of the company. So I was scratching my head thinking what the name of the company would be. And one of my students asked me, well, when you're best at consulting, what happens? And I said, well, it's not my way or their way. A third way emerges. And that's how Third Angle started. And so it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier. It's like you got to incorporate and respect those different ideas and assets. And then something that you didn't even think of before better incorporates everybody's ideas or assets, but also raises it up.
I love it. And you know what? This is the perfect segue into that spark and into you beginning Third Angle. So you had that kind of aha moment and you came up with the name. And can you talk a little bit more about what you were doing right before Third Angle? And sounds like you also had some great advisors that were encouraging you to start something. So maybe we jump into the spark that created it all.
Sure. So I was a professor and dean at Northwestern University,
Wow.
and
Very
starting
impressive.
well and enjoyable. And my MO really throughout Northwestern is that of entrepreneur. So I was a startup person. Again, I would see potential in the university that wasn't being used in the schools that I worked in. First, it was the School of Education and Social Policy, because that's where cognitive science was, art and cognitive psychology mainly. And that's my background. And then Kellogg and the Complexity Institute. But anyway, in all of those places, I would see potential of what we could do not only within the university, but for business and the public and translate things out. And so that's what I was doing. And in the midst of doing that, a friend who was an adjunct professor came to me and said, I have a client that wants to change the way they do business. And it was one of those stories where they were being pushed into the commodity corner. They were a marketing firm, and they wanted to be thought of as more of a valued partner, but it would require a change of mindset and a change of the way that their employees thought of themselves and interacted with their clients. So he said, you're one of the few people I know who understands like that form of learning. How can people change that? So I got asked to go with him to that client. And one of the funny outcomes of that first client story was that one of the executive vice presidents that I interviewed, that's always one of my MOs, is like, give me 10 people with very diverse views of the way things are. Let me talk to them and then we'll come up with something. And this lady, to tell you the truth, was a hellcat. And she didn't want to be interviewed. And I heard her hollering over the phone to the person who was scheduling interviews. And I said, who was that? And they're like, that's your Friday appointment.
Oh, you love to hear that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, this is fun. So she'll give you 30 minutes. Well, when I went there on Friday, like at 3 p.m, we were still going at 5:30. And we just clicked. And really what it was is she was very unhappy because she had potential that was being unrealized in the company, and she needed to move on. So that, speaking of dance, was a delicate dance because I advised one of their employees to quit. But
they were like, what did we hire you here for?
Yeah, exactly. So just trying to help her come to see maybe what she needed to do. And she asked if we could like meet for dinner or drinks a couple weeks later, because we lived in kind of the same area. Yeah. And so we did. And over a couple scotches, she was kind of still trying to see the light, I guess, of what her purpose in life was. And she said, who in the world knows their purpose in life? And I blurted out without even thinking, I do. And she said, what is it? And I still have it written down to this day, to help gifted people see potential and realize it.
I love that. So it's exactly what you've always been doing. It's perfect.
I always come back to that. And it's not just the potential in themselves, although that's really important, but things that they want to help grow. It could be their financial portfolio, it could be their business, it could be their market. They have to have a predisposition to grow both the kind of material side of life and human side of life together, and trying to help them see that potential and then how to make it happen. So when I get confused or down or whatever, I always come back to that purpose of like, yeah, that still holds true.
That's beautiful. And I think anytime you're searching for what it is, what that guiding light is, what is that deeper reason for what you're doing, what's beautiful about your purpose is it's outside of yourself. It's so focused on creating a better world, helping individuals. And I think that when you're able to get outside of yourself, things get a lot clearer and a lot easier to work on and work hard on, because it doesn't sound like this first or couple of clients were the easiest, but you inserted yourself, you really listened, and it sounds like what was the end result with that first client? Did it all go smoothly, or?
I think that they were a situation that was hard to change, and we moved on, and I think they sold, but we've all learned. I mean, that was the first of then many clients that I started getting called. And what I started doing, back to the idea of being a journalist. So I would collect data for the client, of course, keeping everything confidential, but I would make sense of all these interactions and these clients, including that one, and what went right and what went wrong. Because there again, I always think of this as entrepreneurship and innovation. Like, you're trying to do something new, and what does it take for something new to happen, and when does it work and when doesn't it? So what I've learned is, what's the method? What's the secret sauce of that works? Not only when I do it with clients or in the university or whatever, but these clients that I've been blessed, Third Angle's bench now is Third Angle's former best clients. And
that is, I would love to hear more about that too.
Yeah.
That is I think that's such a unique framework, but it's so smart. It's all the best clients, the smartest, most diverse brains able to come together and really problem solve.
They have that sort of method that I spent 30 years journaling about and now making into a method. Many parts of that method was implicit in them and their behavior and mindset. So now trying to make that explicit so we can use it more systematically with other clients and teach it to them is a lot about what I'm about these days.
That's great. I would love to hear a little about the rise, I guess we'll call it, between your initial just getting into even running Third Angle, finding these new clients. Sounds like you're so great at listening, note taking, the journalistic. What is all the data first, and then what do we solve, or what is the path forward? I'd love to hear about sort of how that evolution looked as you were growing Third Angle and really getting it up to where it is today.
Yeah, so all along I held two jobs. So full-time job was the professor job, kept going, and then Third Angle on the side. And I guess the nice part about that is that I've always had one foot in the door of academia, one foot in the door of business. So I'm always learning cutting edge knowledge and all that and bringing that to bear. On the other hand, time, you can't devote yourself to your company when you've got another full-time job.
Yep.
So it really took a long time for me to take that leap of faith and jump.
Yep.
But my heart's always been in application and business and how to make things work better in the real world, if you will.
Yep. And I mean, it's your purpose. And if you boil it all down,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what I did after so long was like, I've got to do this. I just feel called to make this full time. And that's when it was like, okay, what do I need to really put the pieces in place to be systematic? So who's the team? What's the method? Who's our target? So I've been much more trying to practice what a consultant would preach in our own company now. What's our strategy? What's the market? All of those things that kind of would just come to me sometimes by the people I met. The other, I think, interesting thing about, maybe paradoxical thing about me, is that I'm at least half introvert. So I'm not a big...
I would not have guessed that.
Really?
Yeah.
But I'm a great networker. And I think it's because my networking is like sincere. I love to learn. I just love interesting people and interested people. And
interesting people love you too. It's amazing. Well, everyone that
I think I inherited that from my parents. People really love my parents. They make friends wherever they go. But anyway, forgot where I was going with that sort of networking story. But that's really been the way I built Third Angle, and it still is. It's like, use the network to build the network through friendships and relationships. Not a huge cold caller. I'm getting better, thanks to you and other people, about putting things out there, ideas and thought leadership, and putting ourselves out there. But it's still a lot about working with relationships, and people then trust you, and then it moves on from there. we kind of have a pattern of when we go into a company of forming great relationships and doing things well, and then it leads to something else in the company.
Yep.
So there's a lot of that.
How have you, or what would you say if someone that's new into business or just trying to grow their business is listening to this? Do you have any tips or suggestions that you have seen work really well for either getting new clients or doing a great job with clients? Like, what are you finding is kind of that secret sauce, if you have it?
I'm going to be sort of cute here with like the 4 M's. I'll say meaning, money, market, and match. And let me explain what I mean by that. I believe there are many entrepreneurs and business people out there that it's about making money and it kind of doesn't matter what they're doing. I have found personally that it has to have meaning. So the work, the clients, it has to resonate with your purpose and your core. That's one of the things that I have found, by the way, in this method is that new things, innovations and entrepreneurial things that work, they resonate with the company's core, and the customers and the people can all say, yeah, that's meaningful. And so, and it doesn't have to be grandiose, it could be a new cookie or something, but people have to relate to it.
Yep.
So anyway, I think that meaning is important. And then multiple ways of making money. I think there's different business models out there. They're just growing and growing and growing. They could be fee for service, project fees. They can be retainers. They can be subscriptions. So figuring out by trying some things and going to the third in the market. And by understanding your market, again, start with who and what, and try things and find out. One of the things that I have learned is sometimes you're calling it one thing and they're thinking the same thing, but calling it something different.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So when do you, like yesterday I was talking to someone and he said, oh, you're like an osteopathic doctor. And I never thought of
You're
it
like,
that
yes,
way.
that is one way to put it.
Yeah, he's like holistic. And I'm like, okay. So I like to hear kind of what what's going through the market's mind, and then matching to that, because there are some clients you're just better off not having because it's not a good match. And I think that gets back to the meaning and the resident, and can you really work together if relationships matter? And so that would be my advice. And I guess the other thing is courage and persistence. It takes a while. And sometimes you're surprised pleasantly, and sometimes you're surprised unpleasantly. So you've got to really be committed.
I completely resonate. I completely agree with everything you're saying. And the match is reminding me of, we do a lot of obviously branding and marketing, and it matters so much who you're speaking to and how. Mm-hmm. And if you're trying to talk to everyone, you're talking to no one. So try to get clear. And then I think the meaning underlies all of it. If there's not meaning and you're not sure what you're offering or what your client or your audience needs and what drives them, it's not going to land. It's not going to stick. It won't feel authentic. So I just wanted to say that I love the M's. That's something that's good. A great, that's a great way to remember.
And the other thing that really is just come through very strong for me in the last year is you're selling to a person, not a company. So it's important to know what the company's going through and what it needs and the context and all of that. But in the end, you're talking to people and what matters to them, both about the company and sometimes in their kind of personal or professional life. It's all got to gel.
Yep. And people love people. So I think it's been really fun working with you and getting to see now that you have this personal brand, which I would love to learn a little bit about and talk a little bit about your book, but it's really forced you into this new, probably sometimes uncomfortable position of bragging about yourself a bit or sharing about yourself or just putting a face behind Third Angle too, that people can really feel magnetized towards and get to know. And it's people connecting with people more than just, like you were saying, just speaking about the company or just two companies.
And thank you for that. And you've helped a lot with that, Paige. I really appreciate it. And I think I underestimated how powerful that still is for people. The people are people.
At the end of the day, that's what they love the most. That's why I wanted to do this interview. I was so excited to hear your journey. And I want to talk about your book, but first, I wanted to ask you about any of your biggest challenges that you've faced throughout running Third Angle and just trying to, I don't know, I'm sure that there's been a lot of ups and downs, and I was curious if you had any challenges and learnings from them.
Yeah, I think, well, a big one comes to mind, I think, whenever a company's at an inflection point, and that's changing where you are on the growth curve, is that sometimes you have to take a couple steps back to go forward. And that's where I've been in that transition from doing Third Angle as a hobby, if you will, when I was at Northwestern, serious with the clients for sure, but not systematic about growing a business, to saying, okay, I got to step back. What business are we really in? What are we best at? How do we form that? And so when you're doing that, you're not out there doing business, or it takes reforming before you can sell and grow again. So that's been a challenging, and again, when you have to hold on to your faith and your courage to say it will come out better on the other side if you give yourself this space to figure this out. And then the other thing that will probably, I guess, as long as I'm the CEO, and given my style, will always be a challenge for Third Angle, and that is the paradox of, on the one hand, personalization and customization per client and scale. So how do you, it's not one size fits all, just change the PowerPoint to the company. We really learn the context and customize to that. However, take a step back, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make our method explicit. It's like there's a way to go about that maybe faster, and certain arcs or questions that you ask everybody, they'll have different answers, but it can help the scaling go faster. We're building a really cool tool that's like an asset map that companies can use, and that can be scaled. So we're finding ways to scale, but never ever lose that personal custom part.
I am with you there. We're obviously with ShineThru, we're so proud to do authentic, deep branding personally with people and with companies, but the scaling is tricky. But I think what's really exciting for where you're at and Third Angle is you guys have so many tools that have proven to work time and time again. And I think that is a really nice way to balance the personalization, customization with the potential, plenty of potential for scaling.
Yeah, thank you. Because those tools are repeatable for sure.
Yeah. And now should we hear a little bit about your book? Because I know that that's another really great tool that hopefully will help anyone that can't work directly with you. They can still read the book and learn a couple of helpful, handy next steps.
Thank you. And people are getting excited about it already. It should be out this summer, The Power of Hidden Treasures. And the name just came to me. And I've gotten some advice from some professional booksellers that say, bad name, it sounds like self-help. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm committed to.
I love it. You got to stick to it.
And that's what it is. And back to the market, knowing your market match, it's like people get it. And it's this idea that, remember I said I've been journaling for years and years, and over 30 years of working with companies and my own entrepreneurial ventures about what works, and often doing it on a low budget, to tell you the truth. And so what's that old saying, necessity is the mother of invention. So if you're trying to innovate and do something new and you don't have a ton of money, or what we have found now in these cases is, even if you do, there are other assets that are very necessary to make this new thing better and make it grow and work. It could be in the way you dovetail with your current operations. It could be in your reputation management. It could be sort of little things, little data points about the market that like big knowledge bases or AI is not capturing, but are like really important for your market. All these little things, how do you those assets, and how do you combine them in new ways to go forward? That's the secret sauce, these hidden treasures. And maybe they're not hidden to like everybody in your company or to your customers, but we all have blind spots. So how do you make those more visible? And then the other thing that on the other side of the importance of these assets is if you ignore them, they are usually the things that come back to bite you.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yep.
so why not make them your friends? And
Yeah.
so the book was a way to say, okay, got lots and lots of stories and case studies of these success stories. So you read study after study after study about innovation and doing new things, and it's like 70 to 80% fail.
Mm.
And that's terrible. That's abysmal. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of sad that some people now just expect that. And it's like, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be that way. So, what are they missing? So, all this years of data and experience that we've collected and stories, I'm like, let's capture those in one place and tell the backstory about when it works.
Yeah.
So, this book is a lot about the backstory. Some things will surprise readers, I think, in terms of how simple they are actually to do, but don't often get done.
Right.
And
Sometimes the simplest things are the
ex-
hardest to do.
exactly. And a lot of it gets back to what we were saying earlier about really know the people involved, your customers, your
Yep.
suppliers as people, and what's really motivating them, and what
Yep.
kind of what those triggers are. Um, Forgot where I was going with that. Anyway, the book tells the stories, but then it tells the method. It's like what
Yep.
is time after time, what's in use here that is being used. So we expose our method and illustrate it by stories. And one of the things I really like about the book, and this could be like the geeky professor in me, is that it you can read it in different ways depending on what kind of learner you are. So some
Okay.
people are top-down learners. Okay, I want like the theory, the method, the framework. Now
Yep.
give me the data, give me the pieces, the stories. Other people are give me the stories, the little pieces, and then I'll kind of come to the theory. So we've written it in chunks, and most of the chapters start with like the big picture first and then work down to the particular stories. But it will be designed in such a way that you can kind of go at it either way. And those tools that you mentioned earlier, I mean, there's only so much you can do to make tools come to life in a book, but we mentioned a lot of the tools that we use and that people can pick up and use.
And I think the storytelling is a great way to make the tools a little bit more understandable and
Mm-hmm.
break them down in a visual sense for anyone new that might not be so familiar with these tools. I've read bits and pieces from the book, and it's really well. It's very digestible, very like you said, no matter what type of learner you are, you can
Yeah.
definitely get a lot of value from each of the chapters.
The first part of the book is the method, the stories, and then since it's about serially successful entrepreneurs, so these are people that thrive and help their companies thrive by doing these successful like innovations and new things time and time again. The last half of the book is who are these people?
Yeah.
And how do you go get them and develop them and recognize them? Because not everybody is cut out for that. But you don't need it to be, but you do need those people in your company. And they don't all have to be the CEO for sure. We were talking earlier about surprises, is that oftentimes they're informal leaders that rise or are really important to it. So we capture that. So I think the book is pretty comprehensive, and to me, it's our kind of playbook. And
I was just going to say, can we call it sort of like a playbook? It seems
uh-huh,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
I think so. And a textbook and a storybook.
that's great. That's perfect.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So I'm very excited about it. And
That's
it's a labor of love. It's got a lot
yeah.
of meaning to it too.
I mean, it's over 30 years of research and
That's right.
your time and your notes all poured into this book. I'm very excited to read the full thing, and I'll let you know which type of learner I am.
Okay. All right. Okay. That could
Uh,
be like a great little quiz we could insert in the book. Like, how did
yeah,
you read this book? Therefore, you're this sort of learner.
I love it.
And,
That's great. Keep it interactive.
exactly.
Yeah, well, we are at time, but I was thinking maybe we could do a quick round of questions and answers.
Okay. All right.
So first, I'm wondering, do you have any favorite quotes or sayings that you like to use or think throughout the weeks?
So they are sayings that my parents gave me that I still hold on to. So like my mom gave me three, and my dad has one that you put them all together, and I think they say a lot about maybe my view of life. So One of them is you can do anything you set your mind to. And that calls up the persistence. It calls up in our family too, a deep sense of like faith. It's like what makes you set your mind to that.
Yep.
So that's really important. Back to the meaning part. Another thing is don't let anything go to waste. I mean,
Yeah.
we were taught that as kids. We ate
Me too.
everything. Yeah. And so that talk about hidden treasures. There's all of this stuff. Don't let it go to waste.
Yeah.
A third thing is there's always something to be thankful for. So
Yeah.
that's looking for the positive and the gifts. And then my dad used to always say, things have a way of working themselves out. So that's sort of like stay true, be patient, and
Yep.
things work out. And
It's that trust, that faith and trust piece.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I always hold on to those things as well as the purpose statement.
I love those. I love those so much. I'm curious too, since you have so much going on, what are your favorite ways to de-stress when you're not writing books, running companies, leading a very successful school?
Well, I pray for sure.
Yeah.
That's how I start my day. And hanging out with my family is really important. And watching, I'm really careful about like what I watch and what I read. So positive, uplifting things or funny things. Hanging out with my little cat. I'm surprised she didn't show up during but that's usually how I sort of ease into my nighttime, and then I read a little bit before I go to bed.
Yeah, that's another thing about you. I think you're so funny, and I like that you unwind with some funny stuff. I do the same thing. I like to laugh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Laughter, you can just feel it.
Yeah.
Our family has a big sense of humor, and I'm glad because it's really nice to grow up with that.
Yeah, that's great. And then I have one final question. So obviously, I am a female-led company. You are. Do you have any advice or tips to any fellow other female entrepreneurs or people that want to start a business, or any words of wisdom for the ladies in the room?
I think it's just always important to be authentic and be yourself.
Yeah.
And be, I think, a person first more than a role. I haven't, to tell you the truth, had a ton of problems with that. Sometimes people have been a little condescending, but I always think that says more about them than it does about
I agree.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you just got to keep going and back to like, who's your market, who's your match, who you're going to listen to.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to know yourself, what you're put on this earth to do, and stick to it.
Yep. I love it. Well, cheers to that. Cheers to you and your stick-to-itiveness and your journey. It sounds like it's been really, really fulsome and plenty more to go, but we're really excited for your book and all the good ahead.
Paige, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk and all the help that you give.